This podcast represents my opinion and the opinion of my guests. This is not medical advice, and I am not establishing a patient-physician relationship with any listener. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each patient is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions you may have.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Not Your Doc podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa, and I'm here today with Dr. Tadros and our producer, Seth. What's up, y'all?
Hey, hey.
Hello.
I am excited about this episode because it's going to be a shorter one than we normally do, and it's actually following up on something that we sort of highlighted at the very first episode of this season.
But it's delicious.
All right, it is delicious. It's delicious. We're going to talk about food today, some more food. But yeah, we talked about, in building new habits, that we wanted to get into, different ways to prepare healthful food, and to make it easy and limit waste. So today we're going to talk about one of my very favorite things to do. One of the ways that I have been eating vegetables for a long time, and that I get my husband to eat vegetables, and then I get kids that I babysit to eat vegetables. And it's roasting vegetables.
Back to the basics.
Dr. Tadros, did your mother or any lovely woman in your life who has cooked vegetables for you in the past ever torture anything to death by boiling it or microwaving it to mush?
My grandmother would make spinach, the best I had, and I wouldn't eat it with my mom. But yeah, it was not so much roasting. It's interesting. It's not so much roasting. It was already mixed in with some sort of casserole, right?
Of course, yeah.
Right,
so
right,
I mean, like,
right.
When I talk to my mom about, my mom has literal PTSD from some of the vegetables
Torture.
she was served as
Torture,
a kid. Like,
yeah.
She can't eat peas in any variety because they only came from a can.
Right, yes. I have a hard time with peas also. But,
just the mushy texture.
Yep,
It just
from your grade school cafeteria.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those things can make vegetables
Bitterness.
so unappealing.
Right.
No, absolutely no chew, no natural sweetness. It's kind of just yucky flavors.
That's
So
right.
Roasting gets around all of that because this is a dry heat method of cooking them. Okay, that gives you crispy, caramely outsides and then tender, kind of softer inside. So roasting takes advantage of something really cool called the Maillard reaction.
How do you spell that?
Are you
How do you
familiar
spell
with that?
that?
Okay, Maillard. Maillard. This is a French scientist who discovered this.
Beautiful.
But basically, this is the same phenomenon that causes butter to brown or a steak to sear. So when a sugar or protein is met with that hot, dry heat all at once, a bunch of chemical reactions happen all at once. And it converts to sugars and umami flavors and a crunchy texture. It's the same thing that causes, cookies to crisp up when they bake in the oven. So yeah, the proteins and sugars on your food get transformed by heat, basically, producing new flavors, new aromas and colors. And so this is a really, really great way to turn up the flavor, volume, and profile on vegetables.
So it's an oven process. It's a dry heat in an oven?
Yeah, this is a dry heat in the oven. You can, of course, roast over an open flame. We roast marshmallows over an open flame, all that kind of stuff. It's still that browning effect that's happening is still part of the Maillard reaction. So think of the difference, between a boiled piece of meat and a grilled piece of meat, right? A boiled
absolutely.
piece of meat, yes, it's
Big
cooked all the way through, but it has no texture on the outside. It can be rubbery.
That's right.
There's no kind of like smokiness that you get from heat actually touching it. A grilled piece of meat is going to be seared and brown on the outside and juicy on the inside. So that's a similar thing that's going to be happening with vegetables.
And whenever you do it in a wok, it's the wok, the kind of the kind of that special wok flavor that you get, and so it's got that. I think that's the equivalent for using a wok.
Sure. Yes, you can use a wok. You can use anything really that is going to transfer like direct high heat. I'm going to talk specifically about roasting in oven because it is easy to execute, and there's a couple of tricks to it that you can use different types of vegetables together. So there are a couple of keys here. So all you need are any fresh vegetables that you can find in your fridge or cupboard. So squashes, root vegetables, Brussels sprouts, peppers, green beans, asparagus, all of these take really well to roasting.
And people don't freak out because I know everybody and their mother will say, I hate every one of those that you just listed.
Yeah.
But hold your horses for a second.
Absolutely. So obviously potatoes, we're looking for things that have a lot of color to them, right? Because color indicates that there's high nutritional value, that there are a lot of vitamins and minerals in what we're eating.
Bioflavonoids, lipoflavonoids, these are big deals in terms of general health.
Absolutely. So another little tidbit about this is that vegetables, say you buy something at the grocery store and it lives for a little bit too long in your fridge,
too many of my vegetables do.
So that happens to me all the time. Another reason why I love roasting, because you can just sort of trim off the bad bits. Say got a piece of zucchini, a whole zucchini, and at one end there's a little bit of fuzz, a little bit of
people freak out about these things. We're Americans. We want
stuff.
That's right.
Just chop that off, and then you've got the rest of the zucchini to work with. So
perfect.
The key with roasting is that you want to cut your vegetables all into the same relative size and shape. So if you're going to do 1-inch squares, you want 1-inch squares. If you're going to do a little bit bigger than that, typically a 1-inch square is a pretty good size for a lot these
because
vegetables.
Your roasting times are you don't have multi-hour roasting times.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to go pretty quick.
Right.
Most vegetables in an inch square or cube rather, you're looking about 20 minutes max to roast it, and that's in all this is depending on.
Which is perfect for if you're doing chicken or your meat, your protein, because proteins tend to go fast if you're doing stovetop and stuff like that. So you can mix and match the two. Yeah.
Absolutely. So. As I said, you can use whatever you have on hand. If you're trying to decide what things can go together on a sheet pan, my idea for this is, like a cookie sheet essentially.
Right. Yeah.
You put a sheet of foil on it, spray it with a little olive oil or cooking spray, whatever you have. A lot of times you don't want to do just one vegetable, so you have one sweet potato and one piece of butternut squash and one zucchini. You're looking for things that have a similar density and water content.
I don't know anything about that. So
right.
Tell me.
So things like broccoli and kind of the more cruciferous vegetables, those tend to have a much higher water content in them. So they're going to roast faster than something that's denser and has less water content, like a sweet potato a rutabaga, or something like that. Okay.
So I've listened to thousands of looked at YouTubes, and nobody's ever talked about density and water content. They talk about cutting it the equivalent, but
exactly.
Yeah.
So like peppers and tomatoes, those kinds of things have a lot of water in them, and they tend to roast faster. The cell walls break down faster. Okay.
Now I'm hungry.
Yeah. So so like carrots go really well with sweet potatoes. Onions go really well with squash. There's kind of a similarity there too.
Interesting.
You can play with all different kinds of combinations, but the point is that as long as they are relatively similar density and water content and the same size, they're pretty much going to cook at the same rate.
So you named a lot of them that sound like root vegetables, but you said cruciferous, which is like the broccoli and the cauliflower stuff like
broccoli, cauliflower,
beans,
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts. How about how would you green beans and stuff like that?
Green beans are good, absolutely. Asparagus, snap peas, like any of these things take really well to roasting.
It's interesting because most of us, we think about roasting, vegetables that are your root vegetables like your potatoes and carrots and your onions, and not think about all these other ones.
So broccoli and cauliflower are two of my very favorites, honestly, because you don't get that kind of like farty sort of flavor,
that
sulfur.
Sulfur,
there we go.
right?
Yeah, let's
Sulfur.
be nice about it. That sulfur flavor.
Right.
When you roast it, you get that because of the Maillard reaction. You
Sure.
get that caramelization that happens on the outside, and you get more like a toasty, roasty sort of taste from those things. Yeah, Seth, what you got?
You can make mashed potatoes out of cauliflower.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh, have you ever done
absolutely.
that?
Yes.
Oh, it's so good. And
Yeah.
the texture and the flavor, if you season it right, it's
Yeah.
the same thing. Super healthy,
Yeah,
way
right.
healthier.
Absolutely. I've
Oh, it's
actually done
I like it better anymore.
riced cauliflower
Ricing, yeah.
out of roasted cauliflower, so I get kind of like the like that smokiness in there too.
Very nice.
But yeah, there are so many different options. Again, you're trying to pick things that are similar.
Right.
If they grow similarly, if they look similarly, that's usually a pretty good indicator that they're kind of the same water and water content and density as well. And of course, this is cheap cooking. This is cooking from what you have in your house, in your fridge.
I will argue most people don't have this stuff because they don't eat enough vegetables, and therefore they don't have it, or it's canned, and which comes back. Can we take out canned stuff and roast it, or is not the best choice?
You can. It's already, if it's canned, it's already cooked.
It's already cooked.
That's
right.
really a good way to think about
and
it.
It's got liquid in it.
It's got
obviously.
liquid in it, yeah. So sometimes like beans, like
Right.
garbanzo beans, for
Right.
example, you can like rinse them off and put them in on
Interesting.
high heat and roast them, get a little toastiness on that exterior. But vegetables typically can't be rescued
So
very
this is
much
more
from.
fresh, and like the French and in a lot of other countries, fresh vegetables you sometimes go down weekly or sometimes a couple times a
Yeah.
week because they go bad relatively fast, and you should go through them faster.
So-
And small volumes, but more frequent shopping.
Absolutely. So I love this as a solution because I'm the kind of person, I usually go to the grocery store like every week and a half, really tops. And I tend to be overzealous about what I buy, right?
Yeah, good.
So this is really, maybe the first half of the stuff I buy, I'll execute really well in the first couple of days.
Yeah.
I've, meal prepped, all that is great. But then this is for the leftover stuff that's just sort of hanging around there. Those few carrots left in the bag,
Right.
that one onion that's
Right.
hanging out,
Part of an onion.
that sweet potato that's like growing its own plant on one side of it. That's what roasting is for, is cutting off those nasty bits, getting it all together with a little bit of oil and a little bit of salt and putting it in.
And the oil and
some dry
salt
heat.
do what?
Yes. So they bring out natural flavors, right? So we've
Okay.
got a couple of different types of flavors in any ingredients. So there's oil or fat soluble flavors.
Gotcha, yes.
There's salt soluble flavors, there's alcohol soluble flavors, and there's water soluble flavors. So all of
did not
those
know
different
this.
things.
Yeah. All
So
right,
meaning
cool.
that they are
Right.
they're activated
Right.
by because these enzymes become digested when they come in contact with these things. So the little bit of olive oil or canola oil or whatever you use adds like lubrication and
Right.
also aids in that Maillard process
And
as well.
it transfers heat
It
more
transfers
evenly.
heat, yes.
Right.
It transfers heat more evenly, so we get kind of the browning and crustiness. Salt is critically important on here. I love using kosher salt that I sprinkle with my fingers because I can see.
So kosher salt, the definition of kosher salt is something without iodine.
Yes,
So it's
so
not as
table
bitter.
salt is
Right.
very, very finely ground,
Fine,
and it's
right.
got iodine. We tend to use too much
Right.
when we cook with it. Also, it has an even saltier flavor profile than kosher salt.
got
Kosher
more-
salt is flakier.
Right.
It has a larger surface area.
It's not the flake. It's not the finished salt because you don't want to waste expensive finished salt on this. Do you?
Yeah. No,
You
this
want-
is not.
right.
This is like, so you can buy a whole thing of iodized salt for 99 cents.
Right.
We're talking about a big box of kosher salt is probably $1.75.
Okay, yeah.
Like, so it's a slight difference in price there,
Right.
but the results are so much better. The larger granule
Yes.
that is also flatter with more surface area dissolves more slowly.
Right.
And so it's drawing out those flavors. It also draws out some moisture from the
Right.
vegetables as they're
The
cooking
heat.
as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So crisp,
absolutely.
it helps crisp. Right.
It helps with crispiness, but it really just awakens the flavors, right? You can also add, dried spices to this as well. If you want to add some thyme or oregano, things like that. Garlic is a great option as well. Some people use onion powder. All of those things are awesome additions, but not necessary to still have a great result. Yes, Seth.
And the great thing about using time is there's an endless amount of dad jokes.
Yes.
Like you got so much time on your hands, you need more time. So no rush cooking dinner. There's plenty of time.
You're right. Absolutely.
I love it. Yeah.
Well, so jumping back, cutting. I think basics. I'm a little knife geek, but cutting. Most people's knives are not even close to being the right sharpness.
Sure.
You don't have to have a bunch of knives. You just have a chef's knife or even a paring knife.
Nope.
We're not talking
nothing
heavy
fancy.
stuff. But it needs to be sharp because it's more fun to cut and
sharp knives are actually safer too.
Safer. So you don't have to put as much pressure.
Yeah.
You don't have to rock it back and forth as much.
Exactly.
So that's the first thing. But cutting into cubes, I know how do you whenever I look at carrot, I'm like, how am I going to cube this?
Yeah.
Or anything else. So can you talk about? I know a little bit about this. Can you tell me about whether it's cubing or sizing pieces the same?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about a lot of vegetables are kind of like cylinder shaped, right?
Cylindrical. That's
so
right.
if you think about kind of like how logs are processed, like a tree log, how logs are processed. So they kind of plane it.
They do.
To make a long, skinny cut, and then several of those stack together.
So they take off a rounded edge, and they use the flat side against the table.
Yes.
And then you square it off from there.
Yes.
You kind of square it off or rectangular it off from there. I see.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's typically the way that I like to do it. I sort of kind of envision like some flat rectangular pieces that I can get from whatever I'm cutting.
I got you.
And then you can create cubes from there.
Do you peel some of your stuff, or do you leave them unpeeled? Your potatoes and some of the other things.
It's totally optional. It's not going to affect your cooking time.
Okay.
So potatoes can be unpeeled. Sweet potatoes you should typically peel. I've never been a fan of sweet potato skin ever. It's a little bit tougher. Carrots, as long as they're scrubbed and clean, you do not need to peel them.
Right.
Same thing with peppers.
Gotcha.
Asparagus doesn't need to be peeled. There are a lot of things that don't need to be peeled. Even if you wanted to roast tomatoes, which high water content, they are going to break down more and become faster. You don't have to peel them.
Right, of course. You don't have to.
So, and some of the skins too actually crisp up and give a nice bit of texture and flavor to them. I especially like leaving the skin on squashes, so on zucchini and not the gourds. Not the gourds. Yes, exactly. Sorry, zucchini, yellow squash. Gotcha. I like to leave the skin on those because that creates imparts some really good flavor. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. The farmers markets, did you hit farmers markets, or is they not convenient or not near you? Or
I do if I can. The main way that I shop, honestly, I'm the kind of person that walks into the grocery store, that I go to the produce area. Whatever is in season that the grocery store has a ton of, they're going to put right in the middle for you. They're going to put it right up there. They're going to have it on sale. It's going to be up there with a couple of other things that go
just
well
like
with
restaurants want to get stuff in season.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah. So typically you can't go wrong with buying from those areas, right?
That's a good point.
So that's mainly what I try to do, and then I try to find some very versatile way of cooking all of these things. So that's why roasting, it's such a standby for me, because it literally works for like any vegetable that I have on hand. And then I can lower my overall grocery bill by continuing to buy stuff that's just in season and on hand, and I've got this standard way that I can cook it.
I'm going to ask basic questions. Where do you put your roasting pan? Nothing ever fits quite everything. Do you leave it in the oven? Are you one of those people that leaves stuff in the oven that you use frequently, or I
am not, just because I don't want to turn on my oven and have it heat up in there. I'm lucky enough to have a cabinet next to my oven that can stack stuff vertically. I have two matching roast half. They're called half sheet pans. So like if you went to like a hotel or a caterer or something like that, they have these enormous sheet pans.
It wouldn't fit in
so
our ovens.
Typically this is like it's like 11 by 13 or something like that.
Right.
That's a half sheet pan. I've got two of those that stack together.
Right.
They work for cookies.
Right.
They work for sheet cakes. Right. They work for roasting.
They're not air bakes. They're not. Nope. They're just standard pans.
Yep, just standard. They're stainless steel. They've got little rolled sides on them.
Why I say this, and other people I think will confirm. Whenever you're an expert at something, or whenever you're good at, you can do anything with it. the rest of us are like, we're worried about, does it be stick or non-stick?
Yeah.
Where do I put it? How do I scrub it? You know, where do I put my vegetables in my fridge? Do I use do I use the crisping? Or do I use all these things that don't matter to you because you go through things fast and you know how to do it and you've done it enough. The rest of us are stuck, and that's kind of why we can't get over a hurdle to start cooking.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I think if you, I just love the idea of using things. Of having techniques to rescue mistakes.
Yes, right.
Right?
Always.
That's always what I'm about. Like I said, you know, I go to the grocery store with the best of intentions, just like everybody, but I overbuy like everybody else, and I've got to come up with ways to rescue something.
Not overbuy, but buy the wrong stuff. But you know, you're there with a list, but you're buying side items all the time. Right.
Or I get too much of one kind of ingredient, use half of it for recipe, and then I've got this other stuff laying around.
Always a chronic problem.
Sheet pans are so useful in the kitchen. You can use them for a million things.
Right.
Aluminum foil goes down great. It cuts down on cleaning.
Right.
That's so typically, like when we're roasting, we do want to have parchment or aluminum foil to create that direct connection to the metal pan itself. You can cook it directly on the metal with tossed in a little oil or something first, but it's a pain in the butt to clean. So I just love putting the aluminum foil down. Makes it really simple.
What temperature are you going to?
Yes, yeah. We didn't get to temperature.
We're still getting there. All
yeah.
Right.
So
let me slow you down.
I like roasting at a higher temperature. 450 is typically what I go for.
Not a broiler.
Not a broiler.
Right. Okay. Not
a broiler.
Not the element on top.
Exactly.
Which always burns everything.
Right. So especially again with these lower water content, higher density things. So those root vegetables, potatoes, some dense squashes, all that kind of stuff. I like to do them a little bit higher heat. They are, because you got to think about it when they're in these small cubes like this, we want them to get nice and brown and toasty on the outside, but also it's got to generate enough steam on the inside to cook it through.
To cook it, to soften it,
yeah. Right? Some things like peppers, the higher water content things, you can go a little bit lower in temperature. Anything under 425, you're going to be baking, which is more of a steam reaction. You're not going to get that Maillard reaction, that crustiness on the outside, Maillard, the browning.
With steaks, Maillard is like 200. There's some temperature that it happens. You can't do it. That's why they tell you to pat your meat dry and stuff, because you end up steaming. You can't get the temperature up fast enough.
Absolutely, and a lot of that has to do with contact too.
Yeah, that's why when they put down the steak, they put a little oil sometimes, and then they push it down on the iron on the cast iron or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So removing water is really the most important part of it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I wouldn't go lower than 425. 450 is usually pretty safe.
Okay.
And then time. It just sort of depends. Like I said, with the denser things, not more than 20 minutes. With the higher water content things, you're looking at 10 to 12 minutes, depending.
Okay.
I love it's so visually indicated when it's finished.
Right.
And also your nose too.
Right.
The smell of roasted vegetables is very apparent. It's going to have pretty consistent and even browning. The pieces themselves will soften.
Do you have to flip anything or anything like that?
Not typically.
Okay.
Sometimes maybe a few minutes into it, I'll give it a little stir if I want to.
Okay.
But even it's all pretty much gonna happen like it's supposed to, even if you left it alone, because you've got the little bit of oil, the salt. They're cut into even uniform sizing.
You don't have to put everything in a bowl with salt and oil before you just put it down. You put it flat on the pan or the foil, and then you squirt the oil over it.
Yeah.
Or spray. You spritz it. You spritz your oil. Or
I'm a big fan of. I've got spray olive oil.
Ah, yes.
I usually like putting some of that down on the aluminum foil first. Then I'll cut up my vegetables, put the vegetables right on there, give it another little spray so the tops and sides of the vegetables get it, and then I sprinkle with salt.
Salt's
finely. And that's pretty much all you need.
Okay. Simple for people like me.
Yeah.
And, by the way, this is simple for people in college.
Yeah.
The men out there who've never turned on the oven ever in their apartment ever. microwave this and whatever and barbecue that and eat out the rest of the time. Yeah.
There are so many different things that you can do with roasted vegetables too. It really livens up anything. I mean, you can put roasted vegetables on a salad. You can eat them with rice. You can eat them with protein. You can eat them with fish. You can,
That's right.
create a casserole with them. You can mix them into soups. It's just that you get that roasty, caramelized, yummy flavor and texture out of it that can, pretty much be put anywhere.
If you have a canned vegetable soup and stuff, you can chop it up small and put it in that and spruce up your canned items. And this counts towards the how many vegetable servings per week. So this is, pizza is not a vegetable. I think one school district tried to convince the people because it had pizza sauce and whatever that it was a vegetable. It is not. Does not count like that, but this does.
Yeah.
So good.
So according to the CDC, only 1 in 10 American adults eat enough vegetables on a daily basis. And then there's another site from the British Medical Journal. It says that adding a single serving of vegetables to your diet every day can reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes by 30%. And that seems a little, maybe that's a lot there. In isolation of other factors, but still the idea, if you can add one more serving of vegetables, one more time that you're going to be eating a vegetable, this is a great way to do it.
I think instead of subtracting, adding this into your diet and then deciding I like this enough, maybe I don't have to stop off from McDonald's on the way home. I can do this in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's the mentality is not to give up your other stuff, but to add stuff that's healthful, that you do like, and you're like, oh, I will choose this over whatever I was less healthful. Yeah.
One thing that I find is that the very American meal of a protein. Chicken, beef, pork, whatever, with potatoes. That's very, very standard.
Yes.
So if you could think about doing slightly less potatoes and maybe also roasting some zucchini in the same size and shape that you roasted the potatoes and having that on the plate too, it's going to be just as satisfying, but it'll increase the nutritional content a lot. It's also a great way to get kids to try it too because it looks more appealing, like roasty, toasty, delicious, the same way their roasted potatoes look. As opposed to, sad circular mush slices of zucchini just sitting there. Like no one wants to eat that.
Yeah. No, it's, there's, my philosophy always is how do I get to this point where it's so easy that I just reach for this and cut that and I spray that. And so a lot of people, part of it is to figure out your kitchen so that you can have this easily available. So it is easy to pop it in.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of its own version of fast food. I know it's not a multi-hour casserole, but but this is its own version of a fast food.
It is super fast and simple. Everybody has a cookie sheet in their house. Literally any cookie sheet will work.
And by the way, if you can use an iron, you can use an iron skillet. Yeah. You can use stainless steel that doesn't have any. So this is something we don't do enough of. Is that you can use some of your stovetop, not the product, stovetop utensils and stuff can work in the oven. They're oven proof.
Some of them you gotta be sure that the handle is oven safe.
Usually the handles on the lid or the handles that you pick up the sides often are not oven safe.
Yeah.
But if you have like stainless steel or if you have copper and other things like that, be careful. Everything is hot. This is the problem. Every single piece of it is hot.
Right.
But you can do that so that if you were like, I don't want to dig out, it's like, fine, use the stuff that you already used.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Absolutely. So I encourage you to try roasting vegetables. Again, it's a great way to, to rescue something that is sad, that's partially growing something or slimy on the sides. Like,
good for you.
It'll save you money. It'll save you time, and you'll be more likely to eat.
You feel good about yourself.
Yeah. For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Give us any feedback you like. You can send us an email at notyourdocpod@gmail.com. You can check us out on our website, notyourdoc.com, where Dr. Tadros' blog lives, as well as all of our episodes. We'll be back with more next time. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Vanessa. This previous podcast represents my opinions and the opinions of my guests. This is not medical advice, and I'm not establishing a physician-patient relationship with any listener. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each patient is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions that you